tactical details, you know, the when and the where and all of that, you need to know the why and the what first, really. So picking your targets is quite important. You can start with a broad issue that you're concerned about. Maybe you've seen, you know, an investigation on TV. Could be about a recent rabbit farming expose, or you could be really concerned about pig farming or whatever. But these are huge issues, and you need to know which part of this am I taking action on, and you know, and why. So the example I'll go through is with otherwise, you might have the issue of burning people out. They're like, another live export rally, we keep going to these, nothing's changing. If you give them some context, it could be a commemoration. We had one recently in Sydney that was a commemoration of a fire on board a ship 20 years ago that sank. Hundreds of those animals, sheep, were basically burned and drowned. So that's just one example for live export. But for your campaign, it could be part of a long-term campaign. So you might be having a rally to get, say, public awareness or something, but it's also part of a launch for some billboards or targeting some restaurants or introducing a new bill, but it's part of a broad spectrum. Or it could be a short-term campaign. You're doing your one protest, and that is your campaign, that you want to express your outrage about this one thing, and that's it. But you need to decide that. Is the message or your action problematic in some way? By which I mean, well, I'll tell you about that. And also, if it is, can you alter that to avoid that? So, some examples, be sensitive to race issues. If you decide that you want to campaign about live export or about anti-whaling or dog meat festivals, anything like that, these are all things that happen overseas. And as you guys know, the Australian agricultural industries and animal industries don't have their hands clean. So you need to be very careful that you're not out there on the street kind of talking about how horrible people over in Southeast Asia are, or in the Middle East or whatever, without actually kind of being sure that your message acknowledges that, you know, things aren't rosy here, that you're not targeting them, but and even if it's an Australian industry like live export, keep them in the target as well, in the spotlight. Obviously, if it's a specific shop or a business or something, you want to be in the vicinity of that, and you want to have a good visual sort of proximity so people see them and they see your protest and they know what it's about. If it's a broad message and you just want a public area, you just want something that's got good visibility, good through traffic and all that kind of stuff. So you can do that in person. A lot of the time, if we're doing circus protests, they go to different suburbs and things, and I already give up, you know, my Saturday every couple of weeks or whatever to go to do the protest. I don't want to do that to go scout a location as well. So you can just hop on Google Maps and be like, well, they're going to set up at this showground. Where's a good public strip, or where's a good driveway or an entrance or whatever. You can see that when you flick on the satellite view or the street view. Check if you're not sure if you're going to be on public or private land. There have been, in Sydney, for example, at the ASA Arena and Amy Park and things like that, where rather than rodeos, which are usually in the fringes of the suburbs, they'll have big bull riding competitions and things straight in the middle of the city or whatever, at these big ASA arenas and things like that. People have organised a big protest, let's protest the professional bull riding thing, not realising that the entire complex is actually private land. And the moment you kind of show up, private security just come and say, look, you guys can't be here, so protest over. That's a waste of everyone's time. No one has seen your message. So it's good to just double check those things. I'm only really familiar with New South Wales, although I did get a little bit of a lesson in Queensland when we did SeaWorld on Friday. But so generally what you'll have is a form that you'll find on a police website. It can be tricky to find. I would just kind of use Google if you can and type in, you know, Queensland Police or WA Police, notice of intention of a public assembly, and their PDF will pop up. Turns out in Queensland, for example, they actually have a Public Assembly Act. I think it was called like a Peaceful Assembly Act or something like that. And the form is actually part of that act, so there's a whole other system. get familiar with that if you can. In New South Wales, we don't have that sort of act. We just have the notice of intention. You, first of all, before you fill that out and send that to the police, because what it does is generally, if anything kind of goes down, they're aware that you're there, and you have sort of a couple of just sort of a bit of protection if so that your protest doesn't get moved along when things go south or whatever. But what you need to do is decide if you want to do that for the type of action that you're doing. If you're doing a supermarket disruption, that kind of action, you guys might have seen videos of that. People walk into the grocery store, go to the butcher's aisle, and stand there holding signs or videos or whatever. Don't tell the police 2 weeks in advance that you're going to do that. But yeah, decide if that's appropriate or not. If you're doing a public protest and it's all completely lawful and all that, you know, let them know, because chances are your circus or your rodeo or your shop or whoever are going to call the police anyway. And if you get there first, then you're a bit more safe. Use clear language, punctuation, capital letters, and good formatting. No one wants to read a slab of text about the protest and be searching through looking for the details. Put it all in the body. Don't hide the details in comments later, like, hey, by the way, this is where we're meeting. Edit your page and put it into the body of the text, because that's where people are looking. And white, male, heterosexual, cisgendered, able-bodied lineup. If we had just 4 of me up there, you end up kind of shutting out other voices in the movement that don't get heard as often or don't get represented as often, and it's good to actually be mindful of that. That encourages people who aren't all of those things to also think that you're catering to them and their voice. And with your guests, back to step 1, start early, because you don't know who's available on the date you want. You don't always get your first choices. And if they have to pull out at the last minute, you also have had enough time between booking them and them sort of pulling out to still be able to find someone else if you have to. Because we're so passionate about this issue. But just tell people what that weather plan is on your event, because they might assume that it's cancelled or something like that. And you want to say, no, show up if you want, because we're still going to be there. Set some ground rules, stuff. Then you can have someone who's going to do that for you. It just means that you always look better to people that are walking past, or you might actually have someone who's on the fence who's part of the industry. This guy owned all of the horses that were being bucking broncos at this rodeo thing. And I was able to just have a conversation with him and hit him with just a few logic bombs that he couldn't answer. If I just shouted at him and said, you know, how dare you do this, like it's horrible what you're doing, whether or not he goes away with any sort of changed opinion in either sense, if people are listening to what's happening, they're probably going to side with me. That's why you need to know your subject matter before you get there. Stay on topic. We can do circus protests or rodeo protests or something, and someone will start talking about zoos, or they'll start talking about eating meat and being vegan, that kind of thing. And most of us there might be vegan, but we're not protesting about that. And they're just trying to derail things. And those 2 people have prevented me from standing somewhere by myself holding a sign. So thank everyone that's come. You don't have to do it personally if there's 400 of them, but you can project it.